Good afternoon, dear learners. The Gandhian Studies Program, MGPE-13. Today, we'll be dealing with the various facets of the global peace movement. And as you are aware, there was the two world wars. One was the First World War from 1914 to 1918, and subsequently, there was a peace conference. But however, there was an urgent need and cry for the peace movement. And subsequently, there was the formation of the League of Nations. But owing to the rise of Nazism and fascism, Nazism, dear learners, it was in Germany, and fascism in Italy. The two prominent leaders of Nazism was Adolf Hitler, and of the fascism was Benito Mussolini of Italy. The countries of in various parts of the world, they were wanting for the lasting peace. But the League of Nations, which was formed, could not serve the purpose, and the world was again in the grip of the Second World War. There was the Rome Berlin Tokyo axis, alliance between Germany, Italy, and Japan. In short, it was the Rome, Berlin, and Tokyo axis against the other United States of America, France, and England. The war continued till 1945, but there was the establishment of the United Nations organization after the havoc of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there is a lot of loss to human life as well as the material. And the United Nations was established to bring peace in the world. There are also an urgent need for the culture, fight against the hunger and poverty, disarmament among the nations, and urgent need for the revival of spiritualism. Because everyone was thinking that if there is lasting peace, then there will be gradual development in the world, and it will go a long way for the peace and development. Dear learners, disasters, the root cause of all disasters and conflict, were aware that it is the root cause is the man, because there is the element of anger in the person, and this poison of anger, through this poison of anger, the individual cannot think about the right or wrong, and it was the famous British historian Arnold Toynbee that there is war because there is a failure in diplomacy. He said this because if a country talks with the other country, if there is a dialogue and there is understanding between good or bad, then only things will go in the right spirit. There will be no hatred, no conflict, and no war. Every why there was the war, two wars, because one group is thinking we are superior to the other. In the First World War, there were the two groups, Triple Alliance and Triple Entity. In the Second World War also there were two groups, the Rome, Berlin, Tokyo axis, and representing Germany, Italy, and Japan in one hand, and the other France, England, and America. So there is hatred and conflict. So there is the war, and leading to the violence. And after the war, there is the search for the lasting peace. And it was the formation of the United Nations Organization, which was founded in 1945 after the Second World War. And initially, 51 countries, they were committed for maintaining international harmony, peace, and security, and develop the friendly relations. This was the motto, because without like-minded countries coming together, exchanging dialogues, meeting each other, there is a expressions of their views, then only one can think of the any social progress, better living standards, and a goodness, which are the need of the hour. Subsequently, it is a very positive sign that many countries of the world gradually, it was initially 51 countries were the initial members, but going to the passage of time, more and more countries joined, and 192 members, they joined the UNO, they became members, and they joined together for the peace and progress of the world. Dear learners, the UN peacekeeping is indeed helping each countries to do away with the different conflicts and creating the different conditions for the lasting peace. Their goal was to search for peace, not to violate and cross each other's territorial rights, and if there is any conflict, to solve them through peaceful means. Now also, peacekeeping is maintained when there is conflict. The UN intervenes and tries for the peace. There is poverty, and many countries of Asia and Africa, they are having the food problem. So there was the WFP World Food Program, and the main aim of this WPF World Food Program, it is the for fighting the hunger. And here food assistance is given, and as per the UN report, help is rendered to more than 73 countries to protect the lives and livelihoods. And if there are any emergencies, any crisis, to restore and rebuild the process of rehabilitation, reduce the chronic hunger, provide nutrition, and the main aim was to reduce the hunger. There is also the International Committee of the Red Cross. It is the worldwide peace organization, and the main brain behind the Red Cross movement was Henry Durant. He wrote a book, and dear learners, he narrated his own experiences after what is happening after the war. He called for the relief, treating the wounded, giving free medical aid to the personnel in the battlefield, and did a lot through the Red Cross movement for the people. Another is the Grameen Bank. It was started by Professor Muhammad Yunus, who was heading the Rural Economic Program Department at the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. And he came in touch with poor villagers who were making the bamboo stools, and the ladies, they were borrowing money from the moneylenders and were in great trouble. It was Muhammad Yunus who understood their problems and gave them loans so that they can improve their living conditions, not be overburdened with loans, and with the profit, they can pay back the money to the bank. Another is the Nuclear Age for Peace Foundation, NAPE. It was it was created for maintaining peace, and its vision was for world peace, free of threat of the war and free of weapons of mass destruction. It was founded by David Krieger in 1982, and they contributed a lot for maintaining world peace. The main motto behind of the mission of Dr. Krieger was for world peace, world free of nuclear weapons. Another is the University for Peace. It was established in Costa Rica in 1949. It is the only university in the United Nations system authorized to offer academic degrees in the field of peace and conflict studies. This university is serving for maintaining peace in the world and doing all good work through peace and disarmament. It is this university, thus, is a unique university and having centers in various parts of the world catering for world peace. Another is the SDI Soka Gakkai International. It is an organization whose fundamental aim and mission is to contribute for peace, culture, education in the world and adhering to the principles of Buddhism. As per a report, the SDI has over 12 million members practicing, practicing the dynamic philosophies in 192 countries. The core philosophy of SDI is the concept of human revolution. The idea promulgated is self-motivated inner change of the individual. The president of SDI, Soka Gakkai International, is Dr. Ikeda, and he proposed a peace proposal to explore the interrelation between the core Buddhist concepts and the diverse challenges of the global society. So we can say that Soka Gakkai International is doing a great service. Dr. Ikeda, just like Mahatma Gandhi, was practicing various principles how peace can be maintained in the world and there will be cordial relation among the nations without any conflict. Another organization was the International Committee of Artists for Peace, ICAP. It consisted of individuals using the creative power of the arts to bring about a peaceful society. The noble mission was to establish peace and foster peacemakers through the power of art among the various countries of the world. ICAP facilitates peace and performing arts activities and events with other like-minded organizations towards creating a movement for peace, culture, and education. Various exhibitions on peace and culture are presented through ICAP in schools and various events are organized. Culture of peace for the children of various countries in the world. And the support was from United Nations International's decade for a culture of peace and non-violence for the children of the world. And this was the culture of peace was from 2001 to 2010. And various booklets were distributed in the countries. In India, NCRT was a partner and many booklets on the culture of peace were distributed among the various schools across the whole country from north to south, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, and from west to east, from Gujarat to northeast Nagaland. So Peace is very essential, and the various ways they help in maintaining peace and justice in society. The other aspect is the role of the NGOs in the peace process. The non-governmental organization NGOs are also playing a vital role in the peace process. They are also trying to prevent conflict among the nations, fighting to prevent hunger and poverty, and how the people can lead a happy, healthy, and safe life. And the NGOs are thus playing their key role. They play an important role for ensuring peace and justice in society and catering in the peace process. There are the civil society organizations, and not for the profit, sole aim of profit making. They are citizen based and promoting public interest over vested interests, and playing their role in the peace process. The NGOs are often classified as operational NGOs. Operational NGOs are further divided into relief oriented or development oriented organization, as the primary purpose is to design and implement the development related projects. The humanitarian NGOs, the Soka Gakkai, Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, they divide their work between relief and development efforts. Relief work is short term and aimed at providing quick emergency relief during natural or man made disasters. Distributions of food, airlifting, providing medicine, safe water, providing tents, temporary shelters, counseling. The human rights NGOs, the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watchdog, these are the advocacy organizations to promote the basic rights of the people. The capacity building NGOs, the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict, Open Society, they engage in activities like making public policies to promote transition from communism or totalitarianism to democratic governance or from conflict to peace. Their basic aim is to address issues like the free and fair election, freedom of speech, economic and legal reform. The conflict resolutions and monitoring NGOs, the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, International Crisis Group, they are conflict mediation organizations especially dedicated to prevent and resolve the armed conflicts through dialogue. Dear learners, through only dialogues we can change the persisting views and arrive at a better conclusion for a better living. These armament NGOs, for example, the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation International Campaign to ban landmines. They initiate and support worldwide effort to abolish nuclear weapon, ban landmines, to inspire and empower a new generation for peace leaders. The environmental NGOs, for example, the Greenpeace, WWF, the campaign and take measures to prevent environment degradation and build a planet in which human lives in harmony, human they live in harmony with nature. They're trying hard that let there be coexistence and no destruction of the forest. INGO, INGO, if there is some question, it is the for I international and NGO, and if it is ENGO, E for environment, environmental and NGO, and if it is RINGO, RINGO, it is religious international NGO. And one example is the Catholic Relief Services. With the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, when it was adopted in 1948, the principal architect was Roosevelt, and he predicted that lasting peace is the need of the time, and everyone concerned, the NGOs, they should work for it. And their actions should compel the governments to take more human actions for the people. Dear learners, since NGOs are mostly the grassroots activists, they tend to have more familiarity with the local conflict environment, closer contracts with the people, and therefore have been ascribed with the ability to play a preventive role. The Doctors Without Borders are the humanitarian NGOs. This is an international medical humanitarian organization created by doctors and journalists in France in 1971. It operates independently of any political, military, or religious agenda. And owing to the outstanding contribution, they got a Nobel Peace Prize in 1999. Medical teams first conduct evaluations on the ground to determine the medical need of the affected population. They alert the public from abuses to challenge inadequacies of the aid system or to challenge the diversion of humanitarian aid for political interest. Human Rights Watch, Human Rights NGOs. Human Rights Watch was initially formed in 1978 as Helsinki Watch by Robert Bemstein to monitor the compliance of Soviet bloc countries with the human rights provisions of Helsinki Accords. The Human Rights Watch is an independent, non-governmental organization and it is supported by contributions from private individuals and foundations worldwide. The Human Rights Watch is doing great service and also documenting the abuses by the different countries and war on terror also, and working to achieve comprehensive treaty banning anti-personnel landmines, helping and working with the international war crimes tribunals and providing evidence of abuses leading to convictions of officials from the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda. Also, to help focus attention on abuses in China ahead of the 2008 Olympic Games. In recognition of the vital role played by them in trying to end abuses, they were bestowed with UN Prize for Human Rights in December 2008. The International Center on Non-Violent Conflict is an independent, non-profit educational foundation that develops and encourages the study and use of civilian-based strategies to citizens and conducting workshops for the activists. Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, Conflict Resolution and Monitoring NGO. The Center for Human Dialogue, the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue is a neutral and impartial organization from 1999 and is today one of the world's most influential conflict mediation organizations. Its aim is to help alleviate the suffering of individuals and populations caught up in armed conflict. The main aim is to help the people and to dialogue resolve the conflicts, providing some adaptive services such as financing mechanism and other logistical support where the assistance is required. International campaign to ban landmines. It is a disarmament NGO. The International Campaign to Ban Landmines, ICBL, is a global network in over 70 countries that works for a world-free anti-personnel landmines and anti-personnel landmines. It started in 1992 with a coalition of just 6 NGOs like the Human Rights Watch, Physicians for Human Rights, and others. Greenpeace Environmental NGO. Greenpeace is an international organization with a presence in 40 countries and has been engaged in campaign against environmental degradation since 1971. The main aim is defending the oceans by challenging wasteful and destructive fishing, protecting the world's ancient forests and the animal, plant, and people that depend on them. Example, destruction and degradation of forests drives climate change. Clearing and burning of forests release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The area of forest that absorbs carbon dioxide is reduced, creating a toxic-free future with safer alternatives to hazardous chemicals in today's products and manufacturing. Campaign campaigning for sustainable agriculture, by rejecting engineered organisms, protecting biodiversity, and encouraging social responsible farming. Thus, the NGOs are doing a lot of work for resolving conflicts among the various nations in the world, discharging the responsibility of peacemaking and peace building, humanitarian developmental work, educational and conflict resolution activities. In his famous book, Choose Peace by Dr. Ikeda, he states that we must realize the importance of soft power, that is, all kinds of exchange and contracts on non governmental levels. He further says, for the sake of global symbiosis, exchanges among ordinary people are far more effective than contacts between governments. Thus, he stressed on peoples to people contact. It was the NGO, non governmental organizations, that laid the groundwork for the dismantling of the Soviet Empire, brought about a political transformation in Poland, bringing an end to the apartheid system in South Africa, established the principle of accountability for crimes against humanity. The achievements of the NGOs are thus worldwide. They are seriously working today and are involved in the process of decision making. They are also involved in policy making by organizations like the United Nations, World Bank, WTO, IMF, international relations, and peace talks, and no more the exclusive domain of diplomats and bureaucrats. The NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, to play their vital role towards this end. So, dear learners, the NGOs, the role of the NGOs are paramount, and they help in the peace processes in the world and are discharging their role in the right perspective. Now, dear learners, the human rights and culture for peace. The culture of peace and human rights are very much essential in the present day world in the 20th century. No doubt, there is rapid progress in science and technology, but during the Second World War, we saw there was great Holocaust and atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It opened the eyes of various leaders of the world, and there was large cry for the culture of peace. Dear children, dear learners, I feel one of the greatest positive outcome of World War II was the birth of the United Nations. In October 1945, and in 1989, the UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the headquarters, dear learners, is at Paris, and they came up with the novel concept of the culture of peace. The UNESCO concept of culture of peace, which indicated that the world must make a shift from the culture of war to a culture of peace. Dear learners, the culture of peace is the most recent development in the field of peace education. The NCRT, National Council of Educational Science, Research and Training, the headquarters at New Delhi, he is also conducting workshop seminars on culture of peace and peace education. Because culture of peace and along with resolving conflict is very much essential for the development of progress of the society. Another aspect is the human rights. It is a right that one has simply because one is a human being. These are basic and inherent rights with which a person is born in the world, and these are equal and inalienable rights. Human dignity is the quintessence of human rights. The concept of human right is based on the respect for the inherent dignity and fundamental worth of the individual, which is at the very depth of all human beings. It is the basic and fundamental rights. Basic human rights are the ones without which it would be impossible to live, such as the right of food, water, shelter, and basic medical care. Fundamental rights are those which allow us to be citizens and participate in our society, such as having the right to freedom of speech. A particular importance is the protection of advancement of the rights of disadvantaged and minority groups, including women, the elderly, constituting the senior citizens, children, and indigenous people. The United Nations has adopted a holistic approach in broadening the scope of human rights. And the international community has repeatedly affirmed the independence of both sets of rights. Human rights is a modern term, but the principles it evokes is age old, ever since the creation of humanity. Dear learners, more than 2,500 years ago, the teachings of Gautam Buddha expounded with truly revolutionary and egalitarian. The Lotus Sutra reveals, at the start I took a vow, hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinction between us. His teachings were expounded for the happiness of all people with no discrimination based on social position, power, wealth, and or gender. In fact, he was the first to include women in the Buddhist Sangam. Sangam Saranam Gacchami, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. In the West, one of the first examples of a codification of laws concerning individual rights is the tablet of Hammurabi. Hammurabi was a Babylonian king who lived about 4,000 years ago. The codes of law he established offered fair wages, protection of property. Fair wages, you see, we are deploying the workers. If you don't pay them adequately, and as employer cheats them, is it fair play? So wages, dear learners, has to be paid in the fair manner. It was the code of Hammurabi. Protection of property, proportionate punishment and justice, standards on how to live and treat each others. The 282 laws he created became a precedent to the laws that later evolved in the West. A distinct, a distinctive contribution to modern human rights thinking was made by ancient Greece, the cradle of Western civilization. The Greek concept of natural law were laws that reflected the natural order of the universe. The idea behind natural laws is that the source of authoritative moral principles by which we judge people's actions and society laws is not God or the supernatural, but nature. The idea of natural rights continued in ancient Rome, where it evolved a little more than into the belief that natural rights belong to every person, whether they were a Roman citizen or not. The next fundamental philosophy of human rights arose from the idea of positive law. Thomas Hobbes was the first to argue that human beings have rights because they are human beings and that right to life is an inherent right. Subsequently, John Locke, the positive law view was changed to include the various ideas that the state's law stemmed from a constitution, the legal framework of the society. The main argument of Locke were all human beings have natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Governments are formed by people to realize the natural rights and to ensure protection of them from criminals. Citizens should be empowered to revolt or overthrow the government in case it failed in its task to protect them. Dear learners, this became the underlying idea behind the American and the French revolutions and the subsequent American Declaration of Independence. Another is the Magna Carta. It was in 1215, the Magna Carta, a document meaning Great Charter, was the first document forced into unto an English king by some rich barons and landowners in an attempt to limit his powers by law and protect their privileges. King John, King John's treasury had been exhausted in all the wars and crusades he had been fighting, especially in the Middle East. When he asked the nobles and wealthy landowners for money, they agreed on the condition that sign a document with various rights like recognition of their property rights as owners of vast tracts of land and right to move freely throughout England for the purpose of trade and commerce. Again, these rights were limited in scope as they protected the rights of only a certain class of people. However, the Magna Carta influenced many constitutional documents, including the United States Constitution. The English Bill of Rights, 1689. The English Bill of Rights during the reign of the Protestant King William, when he overthrew the Catholic King James II, who had ruled as an absolute monarch. The principal clauses in this document were that monarchy was henceforth illegal and that there should be an elected parliament to advise the king, freedom of speech and debates within the parliament, and the right not to inflict with cruel and unusual punishment for those convicted of crime. About 100 years later, these rights were imposed and influenced George Mason in writing the Virginia Declaration Rights, which in turn strongly influenced Thomas Jefferson in writing the Declaration of Independence, 1776. the American Charters of Freedom. Dear learners, two very impressive documents of human rights are the US Declaration of Independence 1776 and the US Constitution and its first 10 amendments, which constitute the Bill of Rights 1789 and 1791. The Declaration of Independence from England was drafted by Thomas Jefferson between June 11 and June 28, 1776. However, the Declaration of Independence was a political proclamation without a legal binding in American courts. It is the American Bill of Rights, with its reference to the first 10 amendments to the American Constitution, that carries legal weight. Dear learners, the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizens, 1789. Along with the American Revolution, the French activists and dissidents began the French Revolution against the monarchical regimes of Louis XVI in 1789. The French revolutionaries began addressing everyone, including the king, as citizen. The French Declaration was issued in the same year as the American document and has basically the same rights as the US Constitution. The most notable feature is its repeated insistence on the right of equality. The very first article declares that men are born free and equal in rights. It also insists that taxes be assessed equally on all citizens in proportion to their means. UN Charter and the United Nations. After the First World War, the League of Nations was born in 1919 to promote international cooperation, achieve peace and security, and to prevent the outbreak of another war. However, the League of Nations ceased its activities after failing to prevent the Second World War. As a result, the representatives of 50 countries met in San Francisco in 1945 and drew up a United Nations Charter. The United Nations officially came into existence on 24th October 1945, when the Charter had been ratified by China, France, Soviet Union, UK, and USA, and by a majority of other signatories. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights (UDHR) was proclaimed in the Third General Assembly of the United Nations on December 1948. The The drafting of the UDHR involved representatives from all regions, and notable amongst them is Roosevelt. First Lady to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. She was already an internationally respected and well admired lady. As chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, she was its most influential member, and her work on the UDHR will forever remain the greatest legacy of the mankind. The UDHR was originally intended as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. The Constitution of India. India framed and adopted its constitution on November 26, 1949. In keeping with the UDHR, it guarantees the basic freedom as fundamental rights in Part 3 of the Constitution under the headings the right to equality, the right to freedom, the right against exploitation, the right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, the right to constitutional remedies, the right to privacy, etc. The Constitution also abolishes the practice of untouchability. The Part 4 of the Constitution, called the Directive Principles of the State Policy, states principles which are aimed at the welfare of the citizens based on justice in social, political, and economic life. For example, equal work or equal pay for both men and women, free and compulsory education, upliftment of the Dalits. The directive principles are not legally binding but serve as a moral guidance to the government and promote socio-economic justice. Human rights education. It is an integral part of the right to education and is increasingly gaining recognition. The culture of peace. The 20th century was truly an era of endless tragedy of the two world wars, bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Cold War, and subsequently the crave for peace. And there was the United Nations declared in 2000 the International Year for the Culture of Peace and designated the first decade, the 21st century, 2001 to 2010, the International Decade for a Culture of Peace and Non-Violence for the children of the world. Dear learners, from 2001 to 2010, for 10 years, it was the decade for the culture of peace. In India, the NCRT took a leading role and disseminated many literature among the schools across the country, north to south and west to east and northeast. The culture of peace is very much needed in the world, and the people should strive for it. It was formulated at the International Congress on Peace in the Minds of Men, held in Ivory Coast, Africa, in 1989. The idea to use the term was inspired by an educational initiative developed in Peru in 1986 and by the civil statement on violence adopted by scientists from among the world. We stated that war is not a fatality determined by genes, violent brains, human nature, and instincts, but is rather a social invention. Therefore, the same species that invented war is capable of inventing peace. If war is not in our genes, where does it come from? Why has it recurred so persistently throughout history? The answer is in our culture. Over the course of history, we humans have developed a culture that permits and encourages war and violence, the culture of war. So, this is very much needed. Dr. David Adams, former director of UNESCO and the architect of the culture of peace, propagated vehemently for the culture of peace among the various countries of the world. He stated there is only one way out from the cycle of violence, that is a culture of peace. Dear learners, some action areas for the creating a culture of peace, I may say the culture of peace through education, promote sustainable economic and social development, respect for all human rights, equality between men and women, understanding, tolerance and solidarity, democratic participation, free flow of information and knowledge, international peace and security, promote general and complete disarmament, of greater involvement of women in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, and in promoting a culture of peace in post-conflict situations, initiatives in conflict situations, encouraging confidence-building measures and efforts for negotiating peaceful settlement. Human rights, democracy, and peace are a single entity wherein if one disintegrates, they all disintegrate. In the long history of humanity, there has been no true happiness, no true peace, and one of the main reasons for this sad state of affairs is the failure to securely establish the human rights. The wisdom of our ancient scriptures and beliefs in Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, and Sadeva Bhavantu Sukhina, Sabe Bhavantu Sukhina, Sabe Bhavantu Nirama. Let peace and happiness descend on all seems to echo in the current slogan, all human rights for all. Dear learners, the peace movement in India. Peace movements are very much essential and in our country it can be traced to the glorious legacies by and large peaceful nationalist movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi attained newer heights and varying dimensions with the changing nature of the growing scale and threats to peace. For instance, after independence, the government of India under the leadership of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru embarked on an ambitious course of rapid economic development of the country through constructing large multi-purpose valley projects besides other heavy industrial installments symbolically called the temples of modern India. This movement is understood as a new social movement aimed at galvanizing public opinion through the advocacy and concerted action on the plans, policies, and projects having potential to cause serious threat to peaceful existence of the people. Peace movements are reckoned to be new social movements owing to the inception in the post-Second World War time to take up unconventional issues, technologies, and policies that are found to be destructive of peace both at the global as well as local levels. Evolution of the peace movements. As a civilization, India has been a champion of peaceful and dignified life for all in an unparalleled manner. The classic case has been that of Gautam Buddha, who, despite being born in a royal family, was so disturbed by the pathetic and miserable conditions of the common people that he renounced the worldly comfort to become a messenger of peace and social harmony, not only in India but also other parts of the world as well. Dear learners, just like Gautam Buddha, Emperor Ashoka also became a torch-bearer of futility of war and the value of peace, even after emerging victorious in one of the bloodiest wars he fought. the Battle of Kalinga. The Dhauli Stupa is a testimony on how a Chanda Soko is becoming a Dharma Soko, not only in India, but Ashok is remembered for propagating Buddhism across the world. He sent his beloved ones as special emissaries to different parts of the world on peace expeditions to spread the message of peace and harmony in social life. Moreover, one can say that the value of peace is intrinsic and natural in Indian psyche, as all religious, great personalities, socio-cultural value systems, as well as the daily course of life reflect unmistakable appreciation for the value of peace. In modern times, the roots of peace movement in India may be traced back to the mammoth nationalist movement conducted under the spirited leadership of M.K. Gandhi. Significantly, given the Indian mentality of privileging peace and violence, the main course of Indian national movement remained peaceful at all times. The freedom movement of India is indeed historic. The establishment of the Indian National Congress in 1885, the first session of the Indian National Congress, there were only 72 delegates. But consequently, with the passage of the years, the membership, the delegates attending increased, and the message and trying hard to make India free continued. There was the moderates and the extremists. The moderates aimed at freedom and prayed before the Britishers that freedom should be granted to the Indians. The extremists representing Lal, Bal, and Pal. Lal, Lala Lajpat Rai. Bal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Pal, Bipin Chandra Pal. They all wanted freedom in a different way. The movement continued. Mahatma Gandhi was educated at England and living a lucrative practice in India. He left for South Africa and he worked hard there, gained a lot of experience, to fight against the Britishers and returned to India at the call of Pandit Gokhale. After coming to India, he addressed the students and the staffs at Banaras Hindu University and expressed his ideas how to make India free through his various movements. In order to know about the people living in various parts of India, Gandhiji planned to visit different parts of India in the railway train. After a day's journey, he got down, remained at a place, mingled with the people, by interacting, knowing about them, expressing his views, and how to make India free through various movements. He continued, and his movements, he experimented, and has written a monumental book, My Experiments with Truth. Dear learners, I must say, this is a most authentic book, and it has been translated in many languages in Odia, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, Bengali, and so on. It was so popular. The Sabarmati Ashram, the Vardha Ashram, dear learners, if you find time, you may visit them to know details. There is museum hall in both these ashrams, and you can know about his teachings, his preachings, and what was in his mind regarding the peace movement. The peace movement enunciated by Gandhi was not a one-day game. It continued. The non-cooperation movement, the salt satyagraha, the Quit India movement, and the teachings and principles of Gandhiji was also influenced by the outcome of the Second World War. Dear learners, the period from 1919 to 1947, till attaining the freedom, that is the period 1919 to 1929, 1929 to 1939, the year of the starting of the Second World War, from 1939 to 1947 till independence. This period is known as the period of the Gandhian era. And Gandhiji is known for his peace movement. Another term, dear learners, is the peace education. The peace movement in India has also induced intellectuals and activists to introduce peace education in few institutions of higher learning. Department of Gandhian Studies were established in various universities. Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala. Center for Studies in Peace and Non-Violence, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. Peace Research Center, Gujarat Vidyapeeth, Ahmedabad. The Institution of Gandhian Thought and Peace Studies, University of Allahabad. Department of Gandhian Studies are the famous Banaras Hindu University. So, peace education was given a lot of importance. Subsequently, there was increasing number of the universities started establishing Gandhi Bhavan, Gandhi Studies Circles, Department of Gandhian Thought and Action, and Center for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Moreover, now peace studies became truly interdisciplinary as scholars, researchers, and practitioners from across disciplines and professions adopted Gandhian and peace studies. Dear learners, Master of Arts in Gandhian peace studies has been started in many universities, and the leading name is the IGNOU, the Indira Gandhi National Open Universities, and various other central and state universities. And many students are taking up the course to know more and more about Gandhi. Peace education is very important in the school curriculum, and I must say the NCRT New Delhi is conducting seminars, workshops on peace education and conducting a 6 weeks peace education programs for the school teachers. And after being trained in peace education, they are establishing and the peace education is very important in the school curriculum because along with the course curriculum, if the children are taught the different aspects of peace education, it will stand a, it will go a long way in making them good human beings. And knowing the various leaders of our freedom movement, notably Mahatma Gandhi and other stalwarts of the freedom movement. irrespective of the fact that India is home to the eternal virtues of peace and non-violence since time immemorial. The masses do not seem to be sufficiently aware of the interlinkages amongst unsustainable development, nuclear energy, nuclear armaments, societal cleavages, and tensions, and their impact on fragility of peace and dignified life in the society. Peace movement in India appears to suffer from the duality of foreign and indigenous source of inspiration and action for a long time, drawing their inspiration from the West. European peace movements, Indian peace movements remain focused on the issues of nuclear energy, militarization of nuclear programs of the country. Indigenous roots of peace movements in the form of Gandhian techniques of Ahimsa and Satyagraha were either ignored or misunderstood to have relevance only for waging monumental struggle such as the national movement. In case the Gandhian thought and actions was taken to be core concern, most of the efforts were found to be in putting Gandhian constructive programs into action. The policies and programs aimed at disturbing peace around them in the name of developmental activities were, by and large, ignored by the Gandhian peace activities. The common people to fend for themselves if they could discern the real intent and implications of such peace disturbing activities. In other words, Ahimsa and Satyagraha could never become the preferred instruments of protest and persuasion in the hands of the peace activists to a larger extent. In many cases, dear learners, the peace movements by NGOs are found to serve the interest of their organizers more than the interest of the issues in hand. Such incidents not only created waves among stakeholders of peace movements, but also convinced the government of their inability to evolve a deterrent mass movement in protest of its sinister, sinister development designs. The peace movements have traveled a long way in India, traversing numerous difficult terrains. Under the influence of the West European peace movements, though for some times Indian peace movements remained engrossed with the issues of nuclear energy and possible nuclear arms race in the region. The peculiarity of Indian social and economic context made them to change their vision and approach to the issues of peace and non-violence soon. Subsequently, from being just single issue nuclear energy weapons movements to become one of the most diverse and inclusive peace movements in the world. The peace movement is very much essential in the present world and it should also include environmental protection, women's rights, women's rights, developmental developmental issues, human rights, communal harmony, social inclusion, right of the tribals of the people of our forests, help peace movements reach far and wide in the country. Returning peace as a central component of the plan, innumerable movements are active in various parts of India seeking a peaceful life and decent livelihood for the people. With the kind of development policies being pursued by the government in which the issues of life and livelihood of common people appear to be relegated to the background for the interest of the corporate houses, peace movements are likely to be the only appropriate instruments in the hands of people to reclaim their right to peaceful and dignified life. Peace movement, dear learners, I must say, is highly essential so that the coming generation can be motivated to do good for the society. With the increasing conflicting situations, both within and outside the country, involving issues of development, livelihood, gender-related violence, environmental degradation, militarization of nuclear programs, deficit of trust, and the government's governance in governmental institutions, the peace activists endeavored to make the value of peace and non-violence cherished by as many people as possible in order to avoid violence and disorder in the society. Role of the educational institutions. Role of the educational institutions at various levels were found to be of greater use given the persuasive value of education on the minds of the people. In order to diversify the field of education by promoting greater emphasis on interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary studies and also starting programs like Gandhian and Peace Studies as independent courses of study. The government provided better incentives for more and more universities and scholars to take up peace studies on priority basis. I am happy that even the IITs are having Gandhian Peace Studies Center where they teach the humanities programs in political science, sociology, and psychology. Thus, the peace movement is very much essential in different parts of the world, and we in the living in the present day world should be free from the conflict and always try for catering peace. We must remember the lifetime contributions of leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, who contributed a lot for peace education. I salute and quote the following lines. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime and departing leave behind us footprints upon the sands of time. Dear learners, peace education is the only remedy for the present day world where there is fear of a forthcoming war. You see what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, the Israel, and in other parts of the world. There is also conflicting situation in some countries of Asia and Africa. So I say that peace is the only remedy in the present day society. And the peace movements has to be carried on in a dignified manner. Dear learners, sometimes we hear that in India there are some disputes, say for river water between Chhattisgarh and Odisha, Mahanadi river water. They are building different barrages, not giving adequate water. some border dispute in Karnataka and Maharashtra border. So such issues, they can be settled through peaceful methods. And the government of the day should cater to this. And I am sure that the government of the day should do adequate on catering to the peace movements in India. So thank you very much. And I'm sure not only you carry the peace movement in your mind, but practice them as a good human being for the bright future of both our country and at the world level. Thank you. Thank you very much.